So here I am at Gobeklitepe, described as the world's oldest temple. I think that should be the world's oldest temple so far discovered, but anyway. I'm on top of a limestone ridge, which is surrounded by a plain, very arid and dry desert type plain. There's some vegetation, but we're just past high summer. It's incredibly hot, so most of it has turned to straw. The ancients who lived here in those days enjoyed a very different climate. They had a lush climate. They were hunter-gatherers, but the ground was so abundant and the animals so plentiful that they could just eat whatever they wanted. There wasn't a struggle to exist. This meant they could focus on other things, and they focused on the spiritual, clearly, because despite previous academic assumptions that people who lived 12,500 years ago were no more than, people who weren't literate, were they stupid or what have you. No, absolutely not. I mean, this place is completely proven that these were highly intelligent and sophisticated people with a great ability to understand and connect with nature. Probably they understood and connected with it better than we do now, because they simply used their guts, instincts and their feelings. They watched nature, they lived with it, they were part of it, and this meant that they could embrace it in a way that really we don't these days. We have become so separate from nature. Our religions have not embraced it in the way that it is apparent that the ancients did. So we're on a limestone ridge on top of a plain on the South Turkey Syria border, and the ancients in 10,500 BC wanted to be even higher, so they piled earth on top of this limestone ridge, hundreds and hundreds of tons of earth, to make it like a pot-bellied hill, as it's called by the locals. This area still has huge spiritual attractions to the local people. When a local person dies, they bring the body here to be buried. When a local woman wants to start a family, for instance, she comes here to pray for fertility. So the associations go back 12,500 years, but they're still here today. I can't actually film inside the enclosure. It's covered up, and there's a lot of scaffolding and structure, etc. So it's not that big a picture, but I'll certainly put some stills alongside this little piece here. So what we're doing really is just appreciating what they did do, and I'll just describe that. So they carved huge stone monoliths in T-shapes. So the top is kind of like a stylized head, and the body appears to be the body of some giant person, an anthropomorphized stone, because there are arms, carved arms coming down and ending just in front of the groin area with the fingers. They put two huge central T-shapes in the middle of an oval enclosure. The oval enclosure has a low dry stone wall, and that incorporates another 10 or 12 of these smaller T-pillows, T-shaped pillars. And so it's all around the central feature of the two big ones in the middle. The dry stone walls were fairly low. Perhaps people sat around and looked at a ritual that happened in the middle. The enclosure D, there are 6 uncovered so far, but just taking enclosure D as being one of the most spectacular. It's oriented in a north-south orientation, so maybe they were looking at what was happening in the north sky or what was happening in the south sky. The sky of that time was very different to the sky we see now. First of all, it was so much brighter because there was no light pollution. Also, because they didn't have any television or anything else to distract them, they would lie and look at the stars as if it were their soap operas. There they would make up stories and connect with the stars, and this created all the myths that we have today. The planets aren't static like the stars, and so they added more stories to it, and they became characters eventually, which emerged in mythology. So maybe the orientation has something to do with that. Certainly the fact that they put height onto this hill, so there was already a ridge, they didn't need to build this high, but they needed to build even higher. So that means they needed that height. That's possibly because they wanted to look at the risings and settings of certain constellations and planets. As you can see, you've got uninterrupted view. So obviously that must have been important to them too. But also, it appears when I'm inside the small area of enclosures, it's apparent that they also dug down, that they may have wanted to create a feeling of being in the earth, and then also obviously they had one of being in the sky, so they were kind of acting as go-betweens, if you like, or mediators between the heaven and the earth. In that case, maybe the enclosures were used to enact rituals between a man and a woman, fertility rites, etc. Maybe the enclosures were all about the audience being part of this, about ritualizing some kind of act and connecting it, being a conduit really to join in with nature. The pillars are all carved with incredible animals, mythical animals, quadrupeds mainly, so four-legged animals. You've got foxes and boars. There are snakes, there are many birds, flamingo-type birds. I mean, just incredible. Like, first of all, it's incredible that without any tools at all, just with flint tools, they managed to carve these huge monoliths. I mean, they're staggeringly high. And then also on top of that, it's not just that they carved the pillars, they also managed to bas relief or carve out these amazing animals on them as well. So the whole thing is just breathtaking. But yeah, there we go. So I'm thrilled to be here. The cosmos has done something amazing to get me here, because the whole area is restricted at the moment because of the dangerous political situation, but here I am. How did I feel when I was in the temple? Incredible. It's overpowering. I got a huge sense of feeling safe and secure, a huge sense of majesty, and a huge sense of being that conduit between the heaven and the earth. It was an amazing feeling. Thanks for joining me. Okay, bye.